Today, a powerful narrative dominates Indian politics. The idea that Hindutva is a spiritual awakening, a return to an ancient, unified religious root that binds over 1 billion people today. But historical records and ancient texts tell a different story. In antiquity, the concept of a single, cohesive religion called Hinduism is nowhere to be found. Look at this winding river. This is the Indus. When ancient Persians and Greeks looked eastward, they didn't see a shared theology. They saw a geographic boundary, and they used the word Hindu to describe anyone living along these riverbanks. The name that now defines 1 billion people began as an outsider shorthand, a label that would eventually be adopted to mask the absence of a singular ancient core. It is a modern identity anchored to an ancient map, lacking any link to a unified spiritual doctrine. This stone carving illustrates the true nature of ancient worship on the subcontinent. The religious landscape was a collection of independent sects, Shaivas, Vaishnavas, Shaktas, Buddhists, and Jains, each with its own local gods and distinct philosophies. These theological divides were reinforced by a rigid caste system that enforced social exclusion as a way of life. We can see that social distance here. For centuries, oppressed castes like Dalits and Shudras were barred from shared religious life, denied entry into temples, and strictly forbidden from studying the sacred texts. This stratified historical reality sits in sharp opposition to the modern political concept of a massive, equalized Hindu bloc. Sectarian boundaries and caste segregation meant an ancient, cohesive Hindu society was a historical impossibility. Hyperlocal identity, not unity, was the defining feature of the era. By the 1870s, the British Empire needed a way to simplify and govern this vast, complex population. The colonial administration chose efficiency over accuracy. They grouped hundreds of diverse polytheistic traditions under a single label, Hindu. This process explicitly isolated Buddhists, Jains, and Sikhs into separate categories, artificially establishing the demographic borders of the modern Hindu majority. The unified religious label functioned as a colonial shortcut, an invention designed for the empire's convenience. Look at this gathering from the 1920s. Political mobilization was intensifying, fueled by the anti-colonial struggle and the Muslim League's push for a separate nation. Amidst these tensions, political theorist Vinayak Damodar Savarkar realized that a society fractured by caste and local sects could not consolidate political power. In his 1923 book, Savarkar retooled the British census label into a militant, cultural, and nationalistic identity called Hindutva. Savarkar's framework pulled a horizontal web of decentralized traditions into a rigid pyramid structure, mimicking the uniformity of Islam or Christianity. The strategy relied on selecting a singular symbol, like the deity Ram, claiming a holy land, and establishing a unified political goal. To build a demographically dominant voting majority, the ideology also required the dilution of ancient caste barriers, folding lower castes into the new singular identity. Hindutva is a 20th century political project that reverse-engineered diverse traditions into a standardized voting machine. A century later, this man raising a poster of Ram above a massive crowd proves the success of Savarkar's blueprint. The political machine is now fully operational. Historically, the focus of Dharma was moksha, a personal journey towards spiritual liberation. That individual path has been pushed to the periphery by the modern goal, the establishment of the Hindu Rashtra, a nation-state defined by Hindu cultural and political identity. The focus has shifted from an internal spiritual journey towards an external, aggressive state-building enterprise. The central claim of modern Hindutva is the protection of an ancient, pure heritage. But this supposedly ancient identity relies on a label manufactured by British colonizers to streamline their census paperwork. To maintain the illusion of a monolith, the movement must actively overwrite India's history of pluralism and internal division. Hindutva leaders utilize a fabricated past to legitimize modern extremism, proving the ideology is a 20th century political weapon built on historical